What are you telling me, Mandem? I hope you're all good. Welcome back to the series. So you're cruising through writing your HTML, right? It's all good, simple tags, maybe a cheeky bit of CSS, feeling like a coding G. But what happens when it gets messed up? You hit refresh and boom, it's a total mess. Don't panic, bro. I've got your back. I'm going to show you the top tools to fix your HTML game and get your site looking nice.
Nice.
Stick around because by the end you'll be debugging like a pro. Let's dive in. So sometimes when you're writing code, everything's bless. And then boom, out of nowhere, you get hit with that error. You done messed up and now the code ain't working. Either it flops completely or it's just not doing what you want it to do. So let's do this. We've got an index.js file and we've got this console log here. And let's just put a script within here. Now if we inspect, if we right click and press inspect and we go to the console, we can see that we've got a syntax error and it says invalid or unexpected token. And it shows it where the error is happening. So index.js at line 1. And if we look here, we can see that we're missing the closing quotes here. If we refresh again, here we can see the console log. Now, error messages can get complicated, especially when your program is quite big. Even simple slip-ups can take long to someone who's new to JavaScript or coding in general. But there's no need to stress though, debugging isn't that deep. The trick is getting comfy with the language and the tools that you're using. Now if you stay tuned, I'll show you how to handle these errors like a boss. Let's jump in. Now, HTML isn't as complicated as something like JavaScript. Unlike JavaScript, HTML isn't compiled into another form before the browser shows it. It's interpreted directly, which means the browser just reads it and displays it. HTML's element syntax is much easier to get your head around compared to real programming languages like JavaScript or Python. The way browsers parse HTML is a lot more permissive, letting you get away with way more mistakes, which is both a blessing and a curse. So what do I mean by permissive code in HTML? Now let's break it down. Now when you mess up in coding, there are two main types of errors you'll run into. The first is syntax errors. Now these are like spelling or punctuation mistakes in your code that stop the program from running. In the example that I just showed you, this is like how we missed out the closing quote in the console log. Now these are usually easy to sort out as long as you know the language's syntax and can understand the error messages. Now the second type is logic errors. Now these are trickier. Your syntax is spot on, but your code doesn't do what you wanted it to do. Now the program runs, but it's doing its own thing. These are harder to fix because there's no error messages to point you in the right direction. Now, compared to JavaScript, HTML is a different beast. It doesn't suffer from syntax errors the same way because browsers are permissive. Now what does that mean? Or even if there are syntax errors in your HTML, the browser will still try to display the page. Browsers have built-in rules to figure out how to deal with dodgy markup. So you'll get something showing up, even if it's not what you expected. Now, this is cool because your page won't just crash, but it's peak when you're trying to figure out why things don't look right. But no stress. I'm going to show you how to handle these situations and make sure your HTML game is on point. Now, let's have a look at the permissive nature of HTML code with this example. You can grab this example in the GitHub repo in the description below. Now, this example has already got some built-in errors for us to go through. So once you get it, open it in your browser and then let's go through it together. Let's break down the issues. Firstly, this paragraph element doesn't have a closing paragraph tag. And it's similar with the list items. As you can see here, we have an unordered list with 3 list items. However, they all don't have the closing elements here and here. And then lastly, we're missing one right here. Now, it doesn't actually cause too much of an issue if you can see in the browser. As you can see, the closing paragraph doesn't seem to affect it. The browser sort of can make sense of the issue. However, we can see here we have this strong element, but we don't have it closed. And this definitely causes an issue because from that moment onwards, everything is in bold. Now, next up, we have a similar issue where we have an opening strong element here and it doesn't get closed out before the next emphasis tag. Yeah, and as you can see here, because there is no closing strong tag, the emphasis tag gets put on both these words. So we can see here, it's actually bold and emphasized with the italics. Now this href attribute is actually causing the biggest issue. This link isn't rendering at all. As you can see here, the link to Mozilla homepage is meant to be right here, but it's not rendering at all. Alright, now let's check the markup that the browser spat out compared to the source code. Now to do this, we've got to use them browser dev tools. Now I'm using Chrome, but they're pretty similar within Chrome, Firefox or Safari. Now here's how you could do it. You could just right click and click inspect. Now, or if you're using Mac, it's Command Option I. And if you're using Windows, it's Control Shift I. Now let me actually make this a bit bigger so you can see. Now in the Elements panel, this is where you'll see the markup that the browser has rendered. Now you can expand and collapse to see the structure. Now if you want to compare it with the source code, obviously we have the source code here opened in VS Code, but if you wanted to open it, you could right click and click View Page Source. Now with Windows, you could just do Control U, and with Mac, it's Command Option U. So let's just go back. Cool. So let me just close this too. Alright, so let's dive into how the browser fixed up our dodgy HTML. Now to do this, we could use the DOM inspector that we have here. Now the DOM just stands for Document Object Model, and I'll make a separate video kind of going more in depth into what is the DOM precisely. And this kind of view with the elements and the DOM inspector. Alright, here's what we found. The browser added closing tags for the paragraphs and the list items. And as you can see here, there is no ending paragraph tag. However, in the browser, it's added it here. And this goes the same for all the list items. We were missing the ending closing tag for each of them, and it's added here. Also, for the first strong element, we're missing a closing tag. However, we can see here in the browser, it's then added a closing element for each block of text. For each separate block of text, it's closed it with its own strong tag. And that's right down to the bottom of the document. So you can see here, it's wrapped this with a strong. Yeah, it's wrapped the whole block of text with a strong tag. And you can see with here as well, it's closed up the emphasis tag. As we can see in VS Code, we actually haven't got that there. And it's done that for both this part and this last part here. We've got an opening element that it's put in as well. Now, the link with the missing double quote has been completely removed in the browser. And if we try to look for it here, it should be just at the bottom of here. So let's look at an example, and we've got the beginning of the anchor tag. That's been completely removed by the browser. Now, the browser's done a pretty decent job trying to clean up the mess. But let's try to go through and actually fix everything manually so it looks alright. Alright, so let's first put the closing paragraph tag here. Now, let's put the ending list item element here. And let's say we can end the strong tag right about here. Now, similar with the list items, let's end it right here. However, we want the strong wrapped in strong, the strong word wrapped in the strong elements, the strong tags, and let's have this emphasis and we can remove this one right here, and let's have a closing end tag here, and let's fix this issue right there. Okay, now let's refresh this and see how this looks. So yeah, definitely much better. Actually, let's change this up. Let's have all of this in wrapped in the strong tag and have this wrapped in the emphasis tag. So let's just remove this ending element, put it here. So yeah, here's all wrapped in strong and emphasis just around these two words. Now if we refresh this, this is how it looks like. So all of it is in bold, however these two words is in italics with the emphasis tag. And as we can see here, the link works. We can see it all the way at the bottom. It says, you can see where the link or just around here. And if we click on it, it goes to the Mozilla website. So yeah, spend some time messing around with these tools, and then you'll get the hang of comparing the rendered markup to the source code. Alright, you can see from this example why it's crucial to make your HTML well formatted. But how do we keep things clean, especially with a massive, complex HTML document? Now, here's some tips to keep your HTML game strong. Now, the first thing is use a code editor with syntax highlighting. So with VS Code, as you can see that the tags have a different color. Now, this makes it easier to spot issues, like if there's a missing ending element or tag. Now, there's also linting tools that you could use, now like HTML lint, or we can go to W3C markup. There's a markup validation service. Now what we could do here is copy everything directly in there, and it will check if there's any issues with the code. We can also use code formatters like Prettier to keep our HTML clean and properly indented. So as you can see here, if we right click and format the document, because I have Prettier installed as an extension, this kind of sorts out the mismatched tags and nesting issues. Now we could also break our HTML into smaller reusable components, and this way each part is easier to manage and debug. Now this is a big reason why front-end frameworks are so good. It helps us create smaller reusable components throughout our web applications. Now you could regularly use browser development tools to inspect and debug your code. This also helps you see how the browser interprets your code. Now we could also set up automated tests for our HTML using tools like Selenium or Cypress. Now this could help catch errors before they become a problem. We can document our code and use comment to explain complex section. Now this makes it easier to understand and maintain. This is especially important if you're working within a team. Now let's go through the validation tool, but let's actually paste in what we originally had in our example. So let's check this. Now let's go through some of these errors. So you can see here end tag of the list item implied, but there were open elements. Now as we've already gone through, we're missing quite a lot of the closing strong and closing list item tags. Now this tool is great because it catches all of this and it gives you a list of things that you can go and correct in your code. Now a good strategy for fixing errors is to make sure you're fixing a few errors at a time. So you just focus on a few errors, correct them, and then revalidate your HTML after each round of fixes to see what errors remain. Now a lot of times, fixing one error can actually resolve multiple errors. Now start with errors that seem the most straightforward and see if that actually fixes the other issues. And also you can keep revalidating your HTML using a tool like this, or there's quite a lot of extensions in VS Code that you could probably use as well. Now this will show new errors that may have been masked by previous errors. Now alright guys, that's the lot on debugging HTML. Now remember, this isn't everything. We've just covered the most important bits and the issues that you'll see quite a lot. Now I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.